At the end of the day, your brand is what people say about you.
Getting initial traction and then just doubling down on that.
When people purchase your products, they're saying something very specific about themselves.
Welcome to On the Fly.
Hello everybody and welcome to On the Fly podcast. Today we have Aimee Connolly, founder of Sculpted by Aimee, a really incredible story of a brand that's grown so fast. Founded in 2016, Sculpted by Aimee now has over 30 employees, a retail store on Dublin's busiest shopping street, a presence across Boots, Cosmetics, Ireland and the UK, and growing into new international markets. Welcome to the show, Aimee.
Thank you for having me.
So you've experienced rapid growth really over the last seven years?
6 years, yeah.
Taking over Ireland, Boots has been big, you're moving into the UK. What's the latest development of Sculpted? Is there anything big happening now at the moment after all that drama?
Yeah, it's definitely been a fast-paced few years, but it's funny, like I think from the outset people think it's been like this phenomenal growth. Actually internally it feels quite steady, and I think that's because I'm probably used to a very fast pace. So yes, we've grown 100% year on year, but it feels like that's the way it should be. We launched across the Middle East last month, so across Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Saudi. That was definitely the most kind of different move that we've made as a business. So I think really like in terms of what's next, it's nurturing the markets that we're in across the UK, the Middle East and Ireland, obviously adding new products, new people and trying to grow the right way.
So in terms of moving into the Middle East, am I correct in saying that's through a retailer rather than having your own online presence over there?
Yes, so we have always been an omnichannel business. So like you've mentioned, we have our own site and then we operate through distribution. So the likes of Boots, or else sometimes we have our own store. For the Middle East, we have launched via a retailer called Faces over there, but we will also have our own website for that market live in the next 3 weeks. So it's really important for us to keep that omnichannel presence and to make sure that that's always part of our strategy. We definitely feel it serves the customer well. When we break down our business, we're 70% distribution, 30% online in the markets that we are familiar and have awareness in. So obviously some markets are too early to tell. But we definitely find the blend of it is really important for the customer offering.
That's a question that I was going to ask you actually. Your personal brand is quite well known in Ireland, and then when you move into new demographics like the UK or even like the Middle East more so, how do you find dealing with that challenge that your personal brand might not be as well known in those countries? Obviously it just makes things a little bit more difficult.
I'm laughing because we did a survey to people in the UK and someone's response was Aimee who? ? So yeah, it's definitely very humbling. But you know what, we often go back and forth on the importance and relevance of me behind the brand and the brand standing on its own. So I think regardless of whether Aimee by nature is known in a market like the UK or the Middle East, we see it as a massive benefit, particularly at the beginning, to really get that awareness and credibility factor by the fact that I'm the makeup artist behind the brand that's developed this from scratch, so involved in the product, given the education. Like education's huge for us to make sure that customers know how to use the products really well. So although they may not know who Aimee is, I think I still serve a purpose in fronting events, doing content, taking media interviews, more than we probably realise because we take for granted that I've always done that. But at the same time, as much as I am totally happy to be the biggest ambassador for the brand, the ultimate goal in every market is that the brand stands on its own. So where we've gotten to in Ireland now, I think, you know, I'm delighted that the love for the brand is there, but I honestly think that people would nearly just refer to it as Sculpted now, and they nearly dropped the by Aimee. So yeah, it's kind of like a two-part play depending on where we are in the journey of awareness, and kind of gaining that love from customers in the market. But the Aimee who definitely brought me back down to earth.
So you say that when you're launching in the UK, there is an element of trying to build your own personal brand, but more so just to associate a real makeup artist with this product. So it doesn't seem like a kind of a faceless corporation almost, you know, straight reaching their arm into this market. But what's the kind of like playbook there in terms of that launch in the UK?
So some things that we've really learned when we look at our Irish kind of growth of the last few years, and we've been incredibly lucky with like the level of loyalty that we have here, and obviously like the product is good, the product has to be good to get that returning customer, but I think growing that community and having people who genuinely act as advocates and give the word of mouth to other people has been our biggest kind of secret to success. It's also the most difficult thing to replicate in new markets because it's arguably the kind of slowest burner.
And the hardest to measure.
Yeah, totally. So the way that we're approaching new markets is firstly getting into the hands of those kind of key opinion leaders, hoping they actually like the product, which, touch wood, to date we've been so lucky and we've had the most amazing love from those kind of notable people in the UK. And then really kind of rehashing and re-supporting that love to almost give people social proof that they should try and test the product. Because the biggest thing when you have new customers is getting them over the line to convert to actually purchase. So like, how can you tell them that it's great? You show them real people before and afters, filter-free faces as we like to call it. You give them opinions and reviews from normal customers to those that have key opinions in the market, be it across journalism or on influencing side of things. So that's really kind of what we're aiming for now, is really kind of building that love from the beginning rather than doing like massive kind of marketing campaigns that situate us in these areas that like cost a huge amount of money and you can't really you can't really measure what the exact return was.
Is that a tactic that you're talking about there? Makes perfect sense. But is that a tactic to drive online sales in the UK, or is that a tactic to drive sales in the stores where you're stocked, or is it a tactic to convince more retailers to sell your product?
It's a tactic to convince online and retail. So it's funny, we actually feel that even if sometimes we're promoting online, we'll still support with the available in booths because we think that's such a massive credible badge. So, you know, if I was a new customer, or we hope this scenario exists, and they're looking at a new brand, the minute you see it stocked somewhere reputable like Boots, you automatically have a bit of trust going, well, it must be all right if it's in one of those big guys. Yeah. So we definitely find whatever marketing activity we're doing, we're trying to support both. And I think, you know, one of the biggest kind of opportunity/tension points sometimes in the brand can be getting the messaging to support all channels that we're in. So what we really don't want to happen is that a customer feels like online and in-store are very different experiences. So how we marry them more and more together, and how, you know, whatever activations or campaigns we're doing support both, so that they feel like it's all one brand essentially.
Is there any kind of examples you've seen maybe that where that wasn't done well?
It's more like for us personally, you know, sometimes we can be limited on space in store. So stores are so busy.
Oh, so you won't have your full product range?
Exactly.
Okay.
And we're quite limited to maybe a certain, we call it FDU, so floor display unit. And maybe you can't have as much embellished reviews or social proofing or people's stories on it as maybe what we can do online. So it's like really tasking ourselves with how we marry that presence a little bit better with the kind of confined space that we have. So it's something that we're constantly looking at in terms of our retail strategy.
Yeah, and I'm sure the retailer doesn't want to be driving customers to your website to find the product that they want as well. So it's in the interest of the retailer that they kind of nail it is what your vision is for the stand.
But you know, it's funny, like coming out of kind of a post-pandemic era, like we definitely see a huge shift in people informing themselves online and purchasing in store. Okay. So they're going into store, they already know what they want. So I think for anyone listening who doesn't maybe have decided what business strategy they want yet, that dual presence of online and store, I think, is absolutely invaluable for that reason and many others.
It's surprising how valuable that is for cosmetics, actually, in my opinion, because like it's not like you need to try. Well, actually, you do need to try it on, I suppose. Actually, yeah.
Now, in saying that, people are far more confident in picking their shade and exploring online because the pandemic really accelerated that, because they had no option. And we personally put so much emphasis on how we help people to pick their shade. So shade anxiety is a huge thing, because not that you wear foundation, but if you were to and it was the wrong shade, it's really obvious, and it's it's like getting completely wrong size in a jumper. It doesn't fit
bad
you.
Haircut.
Bad haircut. Yes. So we've put huge efforts into trying to make that experience really seamless, but at the same time, there's nothing like going in, swatching on your hand, seeing it in real life, or you just get teased by the lovely sparkly stuff on shelf, and that's where the impulse purchases happen, because you are walking by it in store.
And do you find people who buy then in store become online buyers, and that kind of works out quite well for you? It's kind of like an introductory tactic where you're willing to take the lower margin on the retail sale and then you've got that lifetime value of the customer, and you're making more money when they buy from you online.
Yeah, that's it. Like, it's all kind of one ecosystem. So whether they inform themselves online, purchase in store, repurchase online, for us, we're just happy once the experience of the brand feels succinct and feels thorough for them. And like, sometimes retail stores have so many pros in terms of that tactile nature, how you show up, the presence that you're in. You're getting that shopper who's shopping that category, who may not have known you, but is seeing you on their journey and thinks, oh, I'll try that product. I saw an ad, I saw that on TV, whatever it might be. And then online has its pros, where you can really nurture your community by your loyalty, your rewards, your, how you go the extra mile for them, because you can control the entire experience from start to finish. So they definitely both have their benefits. And like I said, they both work really well together.
This is kind of a hard question, but I'm just wondering, is there any kind of tactics or strategies you're doing to try and marry the online and the offline a little bit more?
Yes. I think for us, for any business in the world that we live in now, you have to be looking at how digital is merged into offline way more. I think it's really exciting. I think there's so many opportunities coming up in terms of like whatever way the world is going to go by, digital screens, etc. in store, and how they elevate themselves, constantly having, say, virtual in places in offline, like own stores. So own stores is an interesting strategy for us. You obviously noted that we opened on Grafton Street. We are exploring other locations this year also, and we definitely find the Grafton Street store is a massive eye-opener to having that one key location where it's Sculpted experience only, Sculpted ambassadors. You come in, you get to explore everything in the way that we want. But at the same time, we're trying to see how we can elevate the digital presence of those stores even more to marry online and offline. So it's a very interesting, evolving space. I think it's an expensive space, but I think that's absolutely the way of the future.
There's an opportunity to be like the pioneer of it.
Exactly.
Of course, yeah. The Grafton Street retail store, it's a huge store. It's four stories, isn't it?
4 floors.
I remember when I saw it first, I was like, wow, that is a massive undertaking. It kind of just came out of nowhere and just unveiled this giant pink building in the middle of Dublin. How's it been going? I know a lot of brands, like sometimes when they move into retail, it can, they might realize it was maybe not for them, or they maybe bit off more than they can chew, but it seems like it's going really, really well from everything I've heard.
Yeah, it is. We're really lucky. I'm laughing at you say that it just unveiled itself, because
as this giant pink building
that kind of happened to the team as well. I came in last January to one of our team sessions and I was like, okay, so I'm going to look at units on Grafton Street, and everyone's like, sorry, where did this come from? Grafton Street's been a few things. It's been an amazing learning, like I kind of touched on there, about how we can fully control the absolute Sculpted experience. I started my career on counter with Urban Decay and MAC when I was like 16 to 19.
Brent Thomas?
Yes, House Fraser and then Brent Thomas. So it's always been really important to me as that artist to have that kind of full 360 when it comes to my own brand. So yes, we're very fortunate to be stocked in so many of our loyal retailers. Like, we're in over 500 stores. So we do not need a load of owned stores everywhere, because we don't want to cannibalize our distribution and also just be available in too many places. So I think the topic of flagships for us is really interesting, because you're picking a kind of hit spot where you place yourselves, you become a destination in that area. So we offer services, makeup lessons, makeovers, etc. You can just shop the product, we can do events. So that's really what we wanted. We wanted to have the space, like the 4 floors, to be able to really go for all the things that we can do that we don't have space to do in other places. And it has been, touch wood, hopefully it stays that way, one of the best things we have ever done as a brand.
Yeah, the experience side of things is really interesting. I know my girlfriend, who you also know, she talks a lot about how you do like wedding parties and stuff like that, and you'd have the champagne, and is it that kind of thing? Like, it's a whole experience around getting your makeup done.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really strong branding opportunity, I think.
So the hen parties, bridal parties, corporate events, you name it, like anything can be facilitated there. And it's funny, before we opened Grafton Street, we probably leaned more on those events being the key factor of the store. And then we opened, and footfall was just, it's been a massive learning experience, all for the right reasons. And obviously it's such a privilege to be able to to be concerned about how busy the store is and how many people are going through it. But it has been a massive learning in that regard.
You said about you don't want to potentially cannibalize the sales of the other stores by having too many of your own stores, of your retail partners. You seem to have a really good relationship with those retail partners. I don't think I've ever seen a brand in Ireland grow so quickly amongst retailers as Sculpted did. Like, it was in Boots extremely early, 3 years maybe. How did you build these relationships with retailers and distributors and buyers so quickly and so successfully?
Well, firstly, thank you, because we do put a lot of emphasis on our working relationships with key suppliers, because, you know, they have a lot to answer for this growth as well by giving us the exposure in store. And when I first started out with Sculpted, so obviously, you know, self-funded, was a one-woman band at the time. Thankfully, I haven't anymore. My tactic was to approach like 5 of the key pharmacy chains to get listings there, and then hopefully more independents would follow, because I physically couldn't serve all of the stores. And that was successful. So bombed around in my car, face-to-face meetings, showing this product, 0 benchmarks on what I could sell, because I had never done this before. And they all took a chance and they were so supportive. Boots came then about 18 months later in 2018. And that was a massive goal for me, because that was huge distribution. It was just a total kind of elevation point for us at the time, even though the brand back then was actually quite different to what it is now in terms of the product offering. So I think through our constant, I suppose, nurturing of relationships, being really supportive of our retail channel. So, you know, not just selling in, going, right, that's our job done. It's like, it's in our interest also to be sure that this relationship grows, sales grow, volumes grow. So we're very in tune with kind of like store events. We have like in-store ambassador events all of the time. So those who represent our brand kind of in stores when we can't be there. So yeah, we keep ourselves busy, but I think it's such an important channel for us that anyone who is in those type of channels that doesn't serve it would be mad not to.
It was such a quick and rapid growth there for such a young company. How did you fund all those like POs that were coming in out of nowhere? Like, that must have been a huge challenge. Because it's important to point out that Sculpted is 100% bootstrapped.
Yeah. My first kind of 18 months of the business was quite a slow growth. I was kind of figuring out what direction I wanted to go in, because being totally honest, when I named the brand Sculpted, I was naming that first product that I launched. I had not naively thought beyond that. I thought, you know, I'll do this product, this would be great, and let's see how we go. And then I was like, oh my God, I love this. I want to do more. This is now all of a sudden the brand name. So I think with anyone in the business, regardless if you're self-funded or not, cash flow is the biggest thing you have to manage. And we've been very lucky to remain profitable, grow 100% year on year, and do it in a way where we've been able to manage it. But I think having that slow start at the beginning was key for that. I think if everything had kind of, you know, gone crazy in that first 18 months, it would have been very hard to manage and sustain that from a financial point of view. So when I say slow growth, I mean, I didn't hire a lot of people. I stayed looking after every sector in the business to understand and learn myself. And then kind of after that 18 months, started to hire, started to get more distribution, started to order more product.
I'm going to move on to talk about creator-led brands, which are a pretty hot topic at the moment. I don't know if you saw Shopify, but they were in South by Southwest, that festival last week in Texas. They had this, they basically converted a supermarket into what was called the Shopify Creator Mart. And they had, it was basically a big supermarket filled with creator-led brands like Mr. Beast, Feastables, Chamberlain Coffee was another one. But it seems to be a thing that Shopify are like really pushing now, is the need or the opportunity for creators to get into products and brands. And it's quite scary for, I suppose, people who maybe don't have that audience and who own brands to see how easy it is. But at the same time, there has been some that doesn't always go well. I recently read about Addison Rae, a big TikTok star. I'm actually not familiar with her, but I've heard the name. Has a cosmetics brand called Item Beauty. Was released in Sephora, but then was pulled pretty soon after for poor sales, even though she has millions of followers. And it's confusing to me, like, why do some of these creator-led brands work? Because you yourself are like an Instagram influencer. Why do some of these creator-led brands work and some of them don't?
Do you know what? I think the Addison Rae example is a really interesting one. And, you know, obviously you would always wish that everyone's business succeeds because so much work goes into it. But I think it shows the sheer level of hard work and consistency that it requires to build a brand. So not just taken for granted that you have X amount of million followers on TikTok. If you don't support and nurture that all of the time, like it is non-stop, particularly in cosmetics. It's so fast paced. There's always someone else. There's always something else. There's always new things going on. It's exhausting. So you have to really love it. You have to feel really passionate about it. And you have to put in a ton of work to make sure that it keeps growing and keeps on trend.
What does that work entail? You mean like demonstrations or talking about your product all the time?
Yeah, so a mixture of things. So like we, for example, have always been a brand that's been very led by our filter-free faces. So real people, community, getting customers involved in campaigns, etc. Creating content with them, creating content via myself and the pros and the brand. And constantly having different content to churn out, but also staying in tune with what the trends of content are. So like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, longer YouTube videos were what everyone watched when they were getting ready doing their makeup. Now you have like 15-second TikTok videos that could go viral, that they want no polish, no grooming. It's all homemade. It's you sitting there with your camera. If they feel like it's too contrived, it doesn't perform. So it's a mixture of kind of how the times are moving and being sure that you're staying current with that. But I think content in general has to be all of the time. And that takes time. You know, it takes people, it takes effort, but it's really interesting and it's a great way to show your creativity. But I think in general, outside of content, you know, it's the product development, it's your marketing strategy, it's your retail strategy. Like there's so much in it. So for going back to that example of Item Beauty, you know, they listed in Sephora and you probably think, brilliant, we've made it, we're in Sephora, I've got millions of followers, happy days. And it just shows you like that's not security, and Sephora will absolutely not keep a brand that isn't performing.
Like it might not even have been an issue with the product, but possibly an issue around authenticity. If you're talking about, I don't particularly know her, but maybe people can see through the fact that she isn't very married to this brand. It's more of kind of a cash grab. She doesn't talk about it all the time. And that can be quite transparent to people. I
think people online are really aware of things.
These days especially.
Yeah, massively. And I think it's a good thing because I think it cuts those who are really passionate and really keen on what they're talking about to the forefront, which is who people want to follow and what people want to watch. So yeah, I think it's very obvious when you've maybe just put your name to something and you're not actively involved or you don't actively care. I think people really see through that and they don't respond well to that, as you'd imagine. You know, if you're buying into the human element, that's the other thing about creator-led brands. People like people. So having myself as Aimee behind a brand serves a purpose as well because people can see a human working to make this work.
And you're quite normal. Like
Thank you. Yeah. I love being called normal.
Yeah. But you're not like, you know, kind of like the big American influencers that maybe seem like such a distance away, you know?
No, if anything, I find I have a real Irishness in me where I get so cringe talking about like.
Yeah, sure. You even got a bit cringe when I called you an Instagram influencer.
Yeah, that's me.
So I'm just going to move on to the last couple of questions here, and these are kind of like quick ones, maybe that just, you know, might help people who are starting or thinking of starting a brand. What has been the biggest challenge in scaling a successful cosmetics brand?
Ooh, good question. I think it often comes back to two main things, which I think would resonate with any industry that you're in, regardless if it's cosmetics or not. One being people. So having the right people, having people who are comfortable with the absolute fast-paced nature of it. And like, it can happen all the time where you might be in interviews and you're like, this is really busy and really fast-paced. And like, yeah, you know, I'm totally on board with that. They come in and the reality is, okay, this is really fast-paced. So having people who are really passionate on the journey and coming with you, and thankfully I have the most amazing team around me where I really feel like they're all really care for what we do and they want to push forward. And then the other part would be financials. I think, you know, as we grow into new markets, it's something we have to be really mindful of because there's always a case of you're pumping money into a new market for awareness and you're actually not getting instant return. So it's not as if you're selling an equal amount of product to get the profit back to be able to funnel back in. Sometimes you have to invest more than what you think to be able to kind of grow the awareness and the love of the product and the availability of the product as well. So that can also be something that can hinder scalability or maybe something you just have to be mindful of.
Aimee, what is your biggest piece of advice for D2C brand owners who are currently doing maybe under $100,000, €100,000 per month? How can they progress to the next stage? I know that's how long is a piece of string?
Literally,
question.
I'm like, okay, another 40 minutes.
What do you see a lot of like smaller brands not doing that they should be doing? Is maybe a better way to phrase it.
So I'll take it from kind of personal experience of how we've really grown and focused on our D2C. And I think one of the biggest learnings for me, which is going to sound maybe a little bit amateur, and it's focusing on every channel that funnels into that end goal. So you're not just looking at what you're doing on social media, what's converting and what's swiping up. You're looking at your paid ad strategy. You're looking at your influencer strategy, if that's part of it. You're looking at your affiliate strategy. Every single thing that comes in and creates, and also CRM on email. So every channel basically that feeds into that end number on D2C of what you see on Shopify, whatever it is that you're using, and break it down to have a target for each one so that it's really clear to you if email is not performing, if paid ads are not performing, if your influencer excelled and you need to do more of that. Because without it, I think without a really, really clear path on what every part is doing for the end total, it's really hard to know what levers to pull in a month that maybe you're down below where you need to be. And also for someone who's maybe under that kind of under 100K, maybe you're not activating all of those channels right now. And there's far more that you can do. Like paid ad, for example, yes, you need to spend a lot, but the chances are you will return way more than what you realize, even though it is a little bit harder these days. So I think separating out the kind of pieces of the pie and having a really clear goal of what you want each to account for. Maybe you need to invest more in some areas and maybe you need to cut some areas that just aren't performing and you're spamming customers, whatever it might be. And I also think content. I think we mentioned content creator-led brands. I think whether you as the brand founder or someone who can do it, or you enlist people that can, the more content you have, and be clever about the content. Think about how you can rehash it on ads, on social, on stories, on YouTube, whatever it might be, so that you're making the job easy on yourself and you're not having to film with 5 different people for 5 different pieces when you can actually get that one piece and use it cleverly.
That's really good advice, and we will call it a day there. Thank you so much, Aimee.
Nice. Thanks for having me.